Hey guys. So, I've talked about my PCBs before, and I just want to show you where I put them. This is the electronics graveyard, I call it. There's a couple of mattresses here that I might sit on to unsolder something before I got my soldering iron. This is actually my old mattress that was on my bed. You can see a little fan blade. And we've got all the outer casing for a bunch of stuff. You can see that's a toaster oven. We got the top of the bread maker, the tray of the bread maker, and a whole bunch of stuff. Sorry if this video doesn't look too nice. I'm recording on my really zoomed out mode, 0.6, and the camera that this phone uses for that isn't very good. Isn't nearly as good as the normal one. As you can see, when I switch to that mode, it looks quite better. But yeah. So under here are the PCBs. I put it under this old sleeping bag. So this is all right next to this, which is, what the frick? You know, look at that that curving effect on the top top left of the screen. That's weird. Anyway, yeah, so these are the PCBs. This electronic graveyard's right next to this vehicle. It's an old Land Rover Range Rover from 87, I think. And I call it the Hornet's Nest on 4 wheels, because it is filled with hornet's nests everywhere. But yeah, before I got my soldering iron, I used to unsolder stuff with a lighter, little jet lighter. So every now and then on some circuit boards, you'll see some burnt spots from when I was unsoldering stuff with the lighter. And you can see some really rusty things like that. That's because this hasn't been covered up for the entire time that they've been out here. So I found this old sleeping bag that was wrecked. It was all ripped and dirty as frick. Completely, it was done for. So I took that and I made it a cover for this, so they don't get rained on as much and snowed on and stuff. This is where I got a transformer off of. I showed you the transformer that this was for in the components, no, in the all my electronics boxes video. At the part where I showed you the big components box, I showed you everything in there. This was there was the 2 really big transformers. This is where I got the bigger one of the 2. And there was a smaller one right there, but it didn't work. Not sure what happened to it. We got continuity on one coil, but not the other. Primary didn't work, secondary did. And this is, I'm pretty sure, an old video processor thing. Yeah, it is. Video signal thing. Not 100% sure what it did. Don't know where the display and everything went. But we've got a whole bunch of video input. And yeah, there was a CPU there. I got that off. You can see the burntness on this side. This is a processor for a stereo. One of those big cubic stereos. I'm pretty sure I got that little transformer, well, that big transformer, out of the same thing that this one came out of. Oh, no, I got that one out of a different one. The one that this came out of was the smaller of the 2 huge transformers. But yeah, so it says what we've got. So amplifier and power is within this line here. So underneath that dash line and underneath this dash line. Dip. Not sure what that's supposed to mean. That's on a couple of boards here that are out of that stereo. But yeah, that's the amp, this bottom part. Got lots of capacitors. I blew up that capacitor by just blowing fire at it. with the lighter. And yeah, lots of transistors, lots of resistors, lots of capacitors, a few diodes. What if I use this camera? Can it zoom in or like focus better? Oh, look at that. Okay, that's much nicer. Okay. Frick, and spring and the allergies are really kicking in. But yeah, what is that? It's an interesting resistor symbol. Huh. And it says RF and not just R. There were some capacitors on here. I took them off. You can see it there. You can see where they used to be. And there was a bunch of wires that came off of there. I took them out, put them in that wires bin. And up here, function, which is the equalizer. That's an equalizer chip right there. I looked up that model name, and that is one crazy sound chip. Got a bunch of little capacitors and some electrolytic capacitors that are all hooked up to that IC. And yeah, and up here we got the radio. Oh, and cassette player. Oh, no, never mind. The cassette player is a separate board. I thought it was the cassette player because I got that IC mixed up with a cassette head switcher IC, which I've got inside. But yeah, I can't remember what that IC did. I'm going to look that up in a bit. And there's some text telling you what it does. And yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff that should be here that isn't. I didn't take those off. They're just never there. We got another IC right there. That is a BA1450S. Frack. And that's a radio tuner. FM radio IC. And yeah. I'm gonna look for the tape PCB. Well, this isn't a tape PCB, but it's a PCB out of the same device. We've got an whoa, why are you so out of focus? There we go. We got an infrared sensor, capacitor, a bunch of little diodes, crystal, that's our quartz crystal that powers the clock. Well, that gets the hertz for the clock. And there's an IC down there. Can't remember what that does. And once again, there's some text telling you what it does, if I can find it. And yeah, and there are lots of places where there were once push buttons. I took those all off and put them in my little components box. Oh, and there was an IC there. What I call MESGEC 5A. MSGEQ 5A. That was an equalizer. Like that one right there. But much smaller, and you could select the output hertz manually, separately. And this is a power supply. Actually, I'll keep looking for the tape PCB. There it is. Alright. So this is the cassette player processor. Frack! A kick. And yeah, that must be the processor of some sort. Must be probably an amplifier, I would say. And that was the tape head selector. I took it off. Then I looked it up what it was after I took it off and found out I didn't have much use for it. Well, I guess I could have some use for it because the tape head selector is pretty much just some relays. A couple of relays and a couple little tiny amplifiers. Is it starting to rain? I think it might be starting to rain and I'll have to make this video later. Yeah, we've got a bunch of transistors, a bunch of plugs. You can tell that this is a tape board from Tape PCB. The AMI 308R is the model of the stereo I took this out of. Man, it's windy. Yeah, those are the PCBs out of that stereo. That is the light system that I took apart just a bit ago. Those were opto-triacs, or photo-triacs, or whatever the frick you want to call them. Triacs activated by giving them power on a different terminal, on different terminals. So much like an optocoupler, but not quite the same. I've got some transistors, lots of resistors, and a few coils. I destroyed 2 of them because I don't know. And I didn't know that they were red on the inside. Like you can barely see it on this one, especially because you can't see on the inside of it because it's not bent. But yeah, they're red on the inside. 2 coils look almost like a transformer. Yeah, my dad says they're dimmer inductors. I'm not sure how they work. I'm guessing they're kind of like transformers. And then we got some transistors. Not sure what those ones are yet. I haven't looked up their model name. And it's really hard to see their model name. There was a big capacitor right there. There was an LM7805 right there, voltage regulator. And I have no idea what the frick that's supposed to be. It never had anything on it. But yeah, you'd plug in really big stage lights into this thing, and you could control them with this. Really big incandescent stage lights, and you could see all the little burn marks. Did I take this apart recently? Yes. But did I still use the little blowtorch lighter to unsolder them and not my iron? Yes. Why? Because convenience. It's really quick. It works very quickly. You just blast it for less than a second and pop, any component comes right off. It's very, very nice for ICs with a bunch of terminals. Because it's really hard to heat up some terminals of an IC with an iron, then heat up the other ones, and then pull off the thing before the solder cools. Much easier just to do it with that lighter. Who cares about burning the board? And there was a CPU here. That seems to be a connector for a drive, for some video processor thing. This is a cable TV channel, channel expander, I think. I can't remember what it's called, but it gives you more channels to use on a cable TV. This was my neighbor's. He gave me a whole whack of electronic devices. Most of the stuff in here is from him. He gave me a whole whack of old electronic devices that didn't work, and he put them into a garbage bag and gave them to me, and I took them all apart. And yeah, no, it had a 7-segment display there, the double one, the red one that I have. That's where I got this. It looks like it should have had a 4-digit one because of all the empty pins, or all the empty holes. Either that, or, oh wait, those holes aren't even connected to any wires. It's probably just positioning. And there's an infrared sensor in there. And we got our CPU crystal for the clock. Capacitor, big bunch of resistors. And there was an IC there, took it off. There was an IC there, took it off. And yeah. I remember where I got some of the ICs, but not all of them. This, get the frick out of the wires, please. This is a PS2. This is a PlayStation 2 Slim. Yeah, we got the CPU in there. Eggs. This is a pretty silly name for a CPU. But yeah, and then we got, I'm pretty sure one of these is the graphics chip. And and RAM and stuff. And under here we got another big IC. And yeah. Oh my god, are you serious? Here we go, frick. That's an RC helicopter controller. No, that was the Bluetooth PS4 controller I took apart in that video. This was the display and controls of a video receiver thing, I think. Much like the one that PCB I showed you a bit ago, but bigger and more high-tech, and it had a full-on hard drive inside of it. And, yeah, I took that hard drive apart and got some really strong neodymium magnets out of it. And that's also where I got the 4 blue LEDs. I'm down to 1 of those. I lost 1. And one of them just stopped working out of nowhere, and I blew up one of them as an experiment. So I'm left with just 1. We got a bunch of switches. There was a 4-digit 7-segment display right there. I'm pretty sure that was the blue one. I don't think you guys have seen the blue one yet. This is a PS3. Looks much like the PS2. It's just a flat board with a whole bunch of tiny wires and integrated circuits. There's our graphics chip and our CPU, and I'm guessing probably RAM. Under here, there's not much. You can see a bunch of little capacitors on the bottom of the CPU. And the hard drive plugged in there, CD player plugged in there. And yeah. This was a sound compressor, audio compressor. It had your potentiometer knobs. Focus on it. There we go. It had the potentiometer knobs on here. There was one that broke when I was trying to take it off. There were these ICs and this were all detachable. And I thought that was pretty cool. You could take them off without needing to unsolder anything. I don't know why that one's black. And we got our microphone inputs and amplifier outputs and stuff. A bunch of different jacks. And capacitors. These capacitors are cool. They got a terminal on each side instead of both of them on one side. And yeah, I got a bunch of op amps off of this. I'm pretty sure that's all the 8-pin ones. They were all operational amplifiers. And one of these was a array of transistors, NPN transistors, and one of them, was what was it? An LM339, which is a voltage comparator. This is a computer power supply. I've robbed a lot of components off of this. It looked way more complicated than this. There were tons of capacitors everywhere. There were 2 big old heat sinks on it, and transformers, and yeah. And there was a big circuit board coming off here as well. I took a lot of stuff off of this. These wires are absolute crap, so I didn't remove them. And check that out. Does that look familiar? Yeah, that's from the Dropsu 3.2 LED 2.0 right there. That's the LED plug. It's a computer power supply plug. That plugs in right into the motherboard. And again, these wires are horrible, so I didn't use them. When you bare them and you try to twist them around a terminal of something, all the little parts just break off. You have to rebare it and try again, and it won't work. And you rebare it and try again, and it won't work. I tried to get that little guy off there, but it just stripped the crap out of the screw. That is a STP-S16L4OCT, which I'm guessing, if I remember correctly, is a dual diode. There's some text confirming. Frickin' black flies, man. These guys are annoying as frack. But yeah. There's a power supply for something. That is a transistor looking thing with a model name that's half of it Half of the model name has been chipped off of the thing, so you can't see what it was, so I can't look it up. But yeah, there was a LM7805 here. Wait, no. There was an LM7905 or 7805 or something here somewhere, but it wasn't there because it says Q1. And Q1, Q is transistor. And if you notice, that's not a transistor. It says D301 next to it, because that's a diode. You may think, oh, isn't the diode that diode right there? Focus. No, it is not. That is not the same diode. These are both diodes. This one's two of them. Oh, that was the voltage regulator right there, where it says, oh, come on, focus, where it says IC901. That was a voltage, that's an adjustable, I think, no, 9-volt voltage regulator with an on-off terminal. So it's like, the on-off terminal didn't act as if it was an on-off switch for if electricity goes through it or not. It was an on-off for the actual regulator. So it's like, if there's power going into it, then it'll regulate the voltage down to 9 volts. And if there's not power going into that terminal, then it will not regulate it, and it'll just act like a resistor or a wire. And yeah, this big boy right here was the processor for a really big video system. This was the one with the hard drive. The hard drive was right there. We got all our plugs back here. A lot of them are completely destroyed. We got some identical circuits in here. I thought that was pretty neat. They got their own chip and their own crystal and everything. And those are not inductors. Them little tiny black things. Those are transformers. Look, it says T2 next to it. And T1. Those are transformers, apparently. Little tiny ones. And we got our CPUs. I'm guessing probably RAM. And another external slot for a drive. And I'm pretty sure that was the slot that actually went to the main drive. Another power supply. We got another external drive. This is, once again, probably from some video thing. Nearly everything that Bobby gave me was were video equipment. Ow. Freaking black flies. Yeah, I got a pulse width modulation controller off of that. And a transistor off there. And yeah, there was a big transformer here. And that Q200, that was a transistor. And yeah. This is another part of video equipment for external drives. And probably the main drive of some sort, or connecting to a... Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Get off. There we go. I think that plugged into there. Cool. This is a audio amplifier, I think. Oh no, this was a tuner. Radio tuner. So, there's some text showing you what that IC does. And there's our AM/FM switch. Not sure what that was. Probably the volume knob. Or tuning knob. No, that was a tuning knob. Adjustable capacitor. And yeah. Another computer power supply. This one I didn't rob as many components off of, but there were transistors and ICs and stuff all hooked onto the big heatsink going along there. And along here. There were two big capacitors. They were only 470 microfarads, but 200 volts. There were 4 huge diodes. And I burnt the living crap out of that capacitor for some reason. And there's a thermistor right there that doesn't really work. Oh, check this out. That's cool. Really neat angle for the sun. But yeah, we got a bunch of transformers. Big inductors. And all the wire on this was really nice wire, so I took it off. This power supply was out of the HP Pavilion A320, and I took apart. This is the processor board for the bread maker. No. Wait, was it? Yes, this was. This is the processor. Well, kind of. No, I don't think that was really the processor, but more the motor controller. Did I show you this? I think I did. Here's a bunch of buttons, and there was a 7-segment display there, and some LEDs, and an infrared sensor. This was for, oh, and a piezo buzzer. This was the processor for a heater. This is a heating element out of that heater. Not sure what it's doing here. Frick, dude. This was once, like a spring, but it pulled it apart, and it untwisted. There, now that's out of there. We got a couple more wires here. And some 120-volt wires. I'm pretty sure this was also out of the heater, just because of the size of the wire. Big, fat, high amperage wire. And we got a low amperage wire out of something else. A bunch more high amperage wire. Low amperage wire with a plug. I use these wires to make power supplies. Just moving some of these freaking wires out of the way, jeez. This is a little charger USB thing that you plug into one of them 12-volt car plugs. There was an IC in there, and there was a really big diode right there, and a little tiny transistor. It was a PNP transistor. That's right, you guessed it, yet another piece of video equipment. This one has a little transformer right there. A bunch of ICs, and some capacitors, big IC with a big heatsink there, and you can, again, see one of them tiny transformers, and video plug there, and there was probably an external board that went on this that had all the other plugs. This, that was that controller. That's a snapped piece of that transformer one. Oh, here is a drone controller. There was an LED here. Buzzer, buttons, and our variable resistors. Omnidirectional variable resistors. Well, I guess I shouldn't really say omnidirectional. 360 degree. Frick, it's windy. Jeez, It's getting pretty cold out here. And yeah, those buttons got destroyed. There was a switch there. And yeah. The hard drive processor just goes underneath the hard drive. And this is a little something that went onto something. And this is a switch battery level detector thing, battery tester for an RC car controller. There were 3 lights, And when all the lights were on, the battery was good. When 2 of them were on, the battery is starting to die. When only 1 was on, the battery is dead. And here we got a radio receiver tag. RC car processor. This is inside the car. All it is just a bunch of transistors. I almost called them transformers. And a little inductor. And an IC. There's a snapped part of an amplifier. You should probably replace it with only the same fuse, or else it'll cause a fire or something. As if it's not already snapped in freaking half. This is part of a controller for a drone. This is part of the PS3. This is little buttons. The PS3, the power and eject. And I think there should be focus. There we go. Yeah, there's a little light. That's the red and green light. And a big destroyed capacitor. A big transformer that doesn't work. And a transistor and an IC on a little PCB. A plug inside of the PS3. Electromagnet out of a relay. This is a cover thingy off of what appears to be a vacuum fluorescent display. It's probably out of that stereo. And this is another part of a drone controller. And underneath here, some buttons, and those were where I got all them little teeny tiny little green lights. I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's also out of that, what's it called? Stereo. And this is a controller for something. Can't remember what. This is a little amplifier. Sound amplifier. You plug in, like, the sound for headphones into it, and it'll play it out bigger speakers. You got your volume. And there was a power button here somewhere. And an IC. Oh, here's the power button. Transistor, bunch of capacitors, wires that go to the other speakers that I ripped off. Here's a little cable thing that I ripped off. Another heater processor. These were relays. These are all the plugs that went to the elements in the motor. This is where I got the blue transformer that's in the Dropsu 12A. This is a toaster processor. I took that IC out and I found out it's actually a timer. And then an electromagnet. Oh, and check that out. We got some 3-terminal things that seem to be pretty bad shape. And that's a dual diode. You can see the schematic right there. And STP-R16. There's some text telling you what that does. That is a BYQ28E. Again, there's some text about what it does. And this is the processor for the phone. I've taken off a whole bunch of ICs off of it. There were phone ringer ICs that played a phone ring sound out of into a buzzer. There's a transformer there. There was a transformer there. Not sure what they did. I'm guessing they're probably amplifiers for the buzzer. And there's a CPU. Can't get that to work. The only thing that would be useful for is in this phone. Couldn't use that. Frick. Couldn't use that in anything else. There's an IC there. And yeah. Toaster. This is the snapped off board of that power supply I showed you earlier. There was an IC on that I took off. Here's another, this is an RC car controller. If you notice, it's much like the one that I've been using before, where it's like a polarity switch. That's just two metal contacts. And that already showed you. This is part of an amplifier and a tuner. There's an IC right there. Not sure what that does, but I can't see the model name because of the heatsink. Frick! There's yet another video board. Got all our video plugs back again. And, oh, hey, buddy. What was a spider? And, yeah, we got our big CPU in there. And some ICs everywhere. And the power supply plug. And, yeah. Not sure why I haven't found a little power supply board for that yet. This is a tuner, radio, AM, FM stereo switch, processor. I showed you this. And that's just a couple little tiny components on a PCB. Not sure what that did. And you can clearly tell that this is an old one. This is from like the 80s or the 70s. Because all the connections and stuff are all wavy. I'm falling the frick over. There we go. If you notice that big hole, that was created by a mouse. Well, not a mouse, but a rat. Drone controller. No. Oh my god. This is the third time I've showed you this. Frick off already. Jeez, This, I ripped a lot of components off here. This is the, Breadmaker processor and interface board. So we got a processor and a bunch of buttons. Frick! A kick. And LEDs. Display. And yeah. Gotta get off of here. Oh, dude, you can just see a bunch of little junk down here. Got a little rectifier board with a broken capacitor. That capacitor probably got stabbed by a screwdriver when I was taking the adapter apart. Excuse me, holy crap. Ow! Freaking sharp, dude. Alright, let's look under here. That is a ballast for a fluorescent light. There's a big well, not a transformer, but again, a ballast. And some other stuff in there. Interface board. I got a 7-seg display off of that. Bunch of buttons. Infrared sensor. Button. And yeah. I can't remember what this was for. If only that part wasn't snapped off, I'd probably be able to find it out pretty easy. Oh, hello again. How you doing, little buddy? This is the rest of that amplifier. I burnt the crap out of that. Those were them speaker plugs. Them things you put bare wires into. I lit it on fire and let it burn for a while. And I blew up some capacitors. I had a lot of fun burning this one. I don't know why. That is a 7805. Why have I not taken that off? Huh. And, yep. You guessed it. That's right. That's where I got them massive capacitors off of. This is a phone modem, I think. Is that a FireWire? No, that's a USB Type B. I thought that was a FireWire at first. I'm not sure what this one did. This is a Wi-Fi router? Maybe. Yeah, it probably was. Wi-Fi router. I do remember taking apart one of those. There's another piece of that amp. Or have I already showed you this? I think I've already showed you this one, actually. And here's a cable system thing. You plug in your cables in there, and it's filled with a whole whack of these cool little cells. I thought that was neat. Bunch of little rooms. And they're full of inductors and resistors, mostly. A few capacitors here and there. And a TV frequency IC. And yeah, there's tons of inductors everywhere. Inductors and resistors. It's basically a really big 3D PCB. By 3D, I mean there's height involved as well. It's not just X and Y like all of these. There's not just an X and Y position. This one's got an X, Y, and Z position. Because some components are up and down. If you notice, there's components that are up higher than others in some places. Plugs that are up higher in some places. Like there. This is another snapped off piece of an amp. A lot of these are just snapped because they've been stepped on. This is a audio wireless headphone system from long ago. These were wireless headphones that it had a big antenna that came off the top that you put your headphones on. You plug in your audio in there. You can adjust the volume for each channel, left and right. And yeah, there was a BA1404 right there. Highly related to the BA1450, I think it was called, that I showed you earlier. Get over here. And this is a little volume thing for an amp. Well, a boombox. This, I no. I'm gonna assume it was a tuner because switch. Weird switch and headphone jack. So I'm gonna assume radio. And here's the other board of a power supply. Frick, hard drive. Some wrecked RCA plugs. Then we got the two composites and a component. And little board. I'm guessing this was probably for an RC car. Yes, it was. Because transistors and capacitors and plugs for the motors. These are a whole whack of little electromagnets. I also lit this one on fire, too. It was already destroyed, so why not destroy it more? This is a processor for I have no frickin' idea. There's a little component attached to this. What is that? P20NM60. And there's some text telling you what it does. We seem to have a weird absence of a PCB. I know that there was... What the frick do you mean move back to improve focus? The closest object is 1.5 feet away. Yeah, I know there was a power supply board for one of them video boards in here, but I just can't find it. It's weird. And I used this heavy crap to hold this on from the wind. This is the front of a toaster. This is the top of the TV channel expander. That's the bottom of the toaster. That's the top of one of the video equipment things. And yeah, that's the electronics graveyard. My hand smells like burnt PCB. But yeah. So yeah. This video was actually a lot shorter than I expected it to be. I expected it to be way over an hour. Oh, you can't see it. Frick. Hornet's nest. There's one under that. Right in there. Okay, you can turn your brightness down now. There we go. There is also one in here. There's one inside there. Don't think you can see it. But yeah, see ya.